So today I'm going to be talking about the barreleye fish, and it's so interesting because, as you can see in the picture, part of its head is actually transparent. So in the front you're seeing their eyes and little snout, and behind that you're seeing actually the rest of its eyes. So that's why they call it the barreleye, because their eyes go so far back into their head, as you can see there. And there are a lot of reasons for this. So I'm going to talk about that. So here you can see the scientific classification of the barreleye. So the barreleye is found in the deep sea. So it's in the part of the sea where there's no more visible light, which is why its eyes are so important. But I'll talk about that on the next slide. So they're found in both tropical and temperate waters, which means they're found in, those low latitudes near the equator and those mid latitudes. So that includes places like Mexico, most of South America, the United States, both coasts of the United States, and so those latitudes, they're not found at high latitudes though, and so they're found in all of the Pacific, the Atlantic, and the Indian Oceans. So they can be found in actually quite a lot of places. So there are a lot of interesting things about the barreleye, mainly their eyes, and there are a whole lot of interesting things about their eyes. So I'm going to get into it a little bit here. They have a unique head in that it's transparent, and so it kind of encases their eyes. So one of the things this does is lets in a whole lot of light, and there is almost no light where they reside. And this is important. They can actually see silhouettes above them, so they can tell when a predator might be around them. And they can also move their eyes straight up, so they can look right up for predators. So that helps keep them safe. And they use this superior eyesight that they have to actually steal their food from other fish, because that's how they survive. So they'll usually steal their food from the siphonophore. I hope I'm saying that right. Which is another deep sea fish. And they have, they're almost like a jellyfish. They have tentacles that sting. And so another thing the barreleye's clear head does is protect its eyes from that sting so that they don't get damaged. And they usually swim around 200 meters deep. And so another interesting thing about their face, aside from the eyes, is that they have almost a human-like, nostrils, and then they have a snout that comes to a point, and their mouth is at the end of that snout, and it doesn't have any teeth because the prey that they eat doesn't really have, they don't need teeth for it. And they're also called the spookfish because of their appearance. And so they usually grow up to be around 6 inches or around 15 centimeters when they're fully grown. And they were discovered in 1939. We knew they were there, but we couldn't know anything really. The first picture that really captured them was in 2004. And we didn't actually know how their eyes worked until like 2009, 2010, because trying to transport them up to the surface was really difficult because, one, their head is so fragile that trying to move them at all usually killed them, and they couldn't withstand the huge pressure change that comes with going to the surface. So just like humans need special gear to go down to the deep sea, these fish just couldn't handle it without, the appropriate equipment. So they were really unable to properly study them until just, the last decade. So the barreleye has a whole lot of unique attributes that help them adapt to their environment. So they live in a region of the ocean, so they can live from the mesopelagic zone all the way down to the bathypelagic zone. So this is around 500 meters to about a little over 2,000 meters. So they can reside in the ocean up to 8,000 feet deep, which is pretty deep. Again, there's no visible light down there most of the time. So another adaptation they have that helps them stay safe is that they have very flat fins, and these fins help them to stay completely still, entirely motionless, which is really important if a predator is coming down above them, because they need to stay completely motionless, and that will usually keep them safe. And they're also ambush predators, which means they steal their food from, other creatures. So this helps them to be kind of stealthy in that. And they also have a tolerance to a larger range of temperatures than other fish. So they're eurythermal, which means that they can tolerate both really warm and, moderately warm temperatures. They can't tolerate the cold ones, but, they're found in a lot of places because of this. So another adaptation, of course, is they have gills on their body that help them, get oxygen from the ocean and breathe. And also they have, an adaptation clearly is transparency. So their clear head really allows their very unique eyes to see around it, but also to see above, and they actually kind of extend forward, kind of like binoculars. If you think of those, they can kind of zoom in on things. So their eyesight is really, truly incredible, and their eyes are so big, so they can take in everything they see. So they can see silhouettes. They can actually tell the difference between, sunlight and bioluminescence. And another adaptation they have is they can actually become bioluminescent. You can see in some of these pictures, when it's dark in the deep, well, it's always dark in the deep ocean, you can see that their head kind of glows. And this is also, it helps keep them safe and it helps them find food. So, some ecological facts about the barreleye. So, we'll start with their reproduction cycle. So, not a whole lot is known. One, because they're so deep in the ocean, and two, because it's really hard to transport them to shore. So, it's not well known what their reproductive habits are, but we do know that they're what's called a pelagic spawner, which means that the males release a lot of sperm into the ocean, and the females release their eggs kind of en masse. So those two mix, and then the fertilized eggs kind of float. They get this kind of buoyancy that the adults don't have, and they float up to probably around 400 meters deep. But then when they reach adulthood, when they're not juveniles anymore, they sink back down to the deep sea and be with other barreleyes. So they generally don't travel in groups. They're kind of a solitary creature. And they don't typically migrate anywhere because they're alone. So they just kind of stay in the same place, the deep sea. So, this is why their eyes are such an important feature to their survival. And they usually eat the zooplankton that swim above them. And again, they're an ambush predator. So they'll usually find food that has been captured by other animals. Typically, the one I talked about before, that's almost jellyfish-like. So because of their special fins that allow them to stay still and their eyes, these fish are incredibly stealthy, which is really important for their survival, both because, first, because this really helps them to catch their food. You don't want someone you're stealing food from to see you, so they just kind of go in and take the food and leave. And it also makes them really difficult to catch for other predators because they can stay very still, and because they can see them coming, and they can tell the difference between, what bioluminescence is, so they can see other things coming. So their eyes are really, truly what keeps them alive, and they are incredibly interesting creatures. And they actually have a whole lot of, I believe, rods in their eyes, so they can really take in everything they're seeing. So their eyesight is incredibly good, like way, way better than we could even imagine. And it's incredibly interesting. So these are my sources, and thank you for listening or watching.